Good evening. For the extra credit assignment, this evening I'm going to be talking about a government um, decision. I don't know if I should call it a program, but it was like a decision made by the government in conjunction with mortgage companies or lenders um, and builders across the country to start something called redlining. Redlining is something that the government started in the 1930s when the government, after they went through the Great Depression and all these financial turmoils, and they were trying to rebuild the economy and putting into the economy what they needed to build housing. So, what they came up with is we're going to circle in red areas in the city or carve out areas in the city that are undesirable areas, low income areas that minorities lived in, specifically African American people. And so the practice of redlining would say, okay, they're trying to move in this area because, at that time, white people and black people definitely did not live together. So this ensured that white families and black families were not going to live in the same quality of housing. With this, it had to come with a lot of discrimination practices. At that time, discrimination was legal. But as you start to move into the 70s and the 80s, those practices were continued. In these neighborhoods, the white Americans were very well versed in the fact that black people were not allowed into certain areas to buy homes, and even in some of the clauses and contracts, it said to the white American that's buying this home in this suburb, because that's where that term suburb comes from. They would sit and say, hey, in this contract, you are not allowed to sell this house to an African American. You're not allowed to rent this house in subsequent years to an African American. And a lot of those families, those houses are still in families today. How is this a poverty trap? Well, for the African American citizen, it's a poverty trap because at this point, like, owning a home is how you gain wealth, owning property. And how much the property is even worth, how much equity you can get from, out of your mortgage loan, how much equity you can gain quick enough to have a good stake in it, and into ownership, which builds wealth for the owner. It also brings generational wealth because now that I own this home, now I can pass this down from generation to generation. Even if I decide to move on to a different home and I've now paid for this home, I can give this to my children, I can give it to my grandchildren, whatever we need to do in order to keep the house in the family. And so that is a form of wealth. Also, when you own something like a home, you can borrow against the loan. As your equity builds up, you could go in and say, hey, I need to take out a second mortgage or something like that, or borrow against, what they put in. So for the African American, once the government, local, state, and was okayed by the federal government to go in and do these things, this automatically put the African American in a place where they don't have ownership of anything of substance. Also, when they started to do this and they started the discrimination practices in loaning black people loans for home, or giving them a loan for mortgage, what they started to do is discriminate against them, giving them any kind of money. So they say, hey, okay, you qualify for this loan, and okay, you're gonna go over there and live in this place in this African American neighborhood, but we're gonna charge you interest rates that's way higher than we would charge a normal American, a white American. So now the interest rate is high, and if they ever get into any kind of financial trouble, they won't be able to probably pay their mortgage. And in not being able to pay their mortgage, if something happens in the economy like unemployment rising, and maybe even just losing a job or getting sick, this would be able, if you have a high interest rate, the mortgages are higher than normal. And so now people are struggling to pay for their home whenever times get destitute, when they get destitute or if they get in need. So let's just say someone gets a disease such as cancer, and they're in the 15th year of owning a home, but they have 30-year mortgage or 20-year mortgage. Okay, now they're in trouble because they're not able to pay. And the banks would rescind loans on African American people quicker than they would the normal white American. And so at this point it becomes a poverty trap, because if you're struggling to keep the house, let's think about this. You have to work longer hours, okay? The longer hours you work, because we African American people were already not in a good position as far as jobs go or careers. So the average African American was in a position of servitude, or still servants, still maids, still janitors, and the average African American was. So you have them working long hours to even keep the house. Now, if they fall sick or something happens, now they're losing the house. In losing the house, they have children at home. In losing the house and having children at home, now they're in they're either homeless or they have to go live with family, which decreases the, I would say, the quality of life for African Americans. Also, if they are able to keep the house, at this point, sometimes a mother and a father could be working 2 and 3 jobs just to take care of that. Well, that's also a poverty trap, because you're working all these hours just to take care of a home, but your children are missing you. The children are not able to do certain things because the parents are not home. And then now we have a case of the children in neighborhoods, either probably committing crimes, going out and getting pregnant, or things like that. So that also contributes to poverty. But as we move into the later years, after redlining was supposed to be outlawed, but they still kept the rules. So as we look at times, like we look at Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia running in a neighborhood, and these white men say, hey, this black man isn't supposed to be out here. And the reason why they're thinking that, which the white gives the white citizen an advantage, is because black people, especially in this time, modern day, 2020, 2000s, not even in 1990, did we realize that there is a such thing as redlining, and that's why these white people don't even want us walking in the neighborhood. So right now, we have cases of a black people trying to make deliveries in neighborhoods that's all white. I've seen videos where their children have been approached by white citizens in that neighborhood and come up to the children and say, you don't belong here. So you have delivery drivers. You shouldn't be in this neighborhood. And black people caught off guard, like, wait a minute, why do you think I can't do a job here, or why do you not even want me here? All comes from redlining, because it stipulates and it lets the white citizen know, we don't want black people in these areas. Do what you have to do to protect these areas. So in that case, that also causes poverty, because a person could get fired from their job because they're getting into confrontations with white people in the neighborhoods. As we see with Ahmaud Arbery, he got shot and killed. just for jogging through a white neighborhood. And I know it seems like traditional discrimination, but it really isn't. That redlining gave the white citizen a feeling of empowerment, not as if they didn't have it already, but even bigger, to say, we'll take you out if we see you in these neighborhoods because the government has empowered us. And I know for people my age, we did not realize that a lot of that was going on. And so when you have a dead father, I don't remember if Ahmaud Arbery was a parent, but if he had a child, dead parent, now the parent can't take care of a child. Getting arrested for things like this, which causes a bad quality of life, and also mental anguish. So if you have someone, people that's living in poverty or impoverished because the government is keeping them in poverty, saying we're going to make sure you have the worst of the neighborhoods and we have the best, and we're not even going to loan you the money. You're having a hard time becoming a homeowner or trying to live the American dream, and you're spending probably, I don't know, sometimes between 12 and 14 hours at work, half of your day, just trying to make ends meet. And you stay in poverty, all to just repeat the same vicious cycle to stay in poverty. And that is my example of the poverty trap. Thank you.